It's conspiracy theory time. Let's get into it. All right, guys, like always, like the video, subscribe to the channel. All right, so I think having written and talked about the Walker Kessler saga for years and the eventual trade to the Los Angeles Lakers, I have a theory that I think is 100% accurate that also tells us what's going to happen this upcoming season for the Utah Jazz. So, Walker Kessler, like we all know, was traded to the Los Angeles Lakers this offseason, and Utah got an incredible haul back. And I don't think that's any coincidence, although I think there's some things that really led to that happening. So let's just look at the timeline of the Walker Kessler saga with the Los Angeles Lakers and the Utah Jazz and everything that led up to the trade. And then let's talk about what that means for this upcoming season and why I think it really has to do with Jaren Jackson Jr. All right, so having talked about on this channel and written about it on SLC Dunk for literal years, dating back to 2023, 2024, when Dave McMenamin, by the way, connected to the Los Angeles Lakers, Walker Kessler also being a part of CAA headquartered in LA, was the first time we started seeing rumors of Walker Kessler to the Lakers. And I actually think that's significant, and I think he wanted to go there long before then. Just because we hear a team is getting trade calls or making trade calls or whatever, a lot of the times those rumors come out not from the teams, but from the agents. And a lot of times those rumors from the agents are to kind of grease the wheels to hopefully make something happen sometimes. Sometimes it's in coordination with the team, sometimes it's to hurt a team, and sometimes opposing GMs will put things out there just to try to cause some contention with another team. Perhaps the Lakers themselves were putting out rumors out there just to cause issues with the Jazz and Kessler. Maybe it was Kessler himself talking about wanting to go to the Lakers. Who knows? But that is when the rumors started, and we heard about how interested the Lakers were in Walker Kessler. And we know for like the last 3 years, they wanted Walker Kessler, even pre-Luka Doncic. But it never happened. And according to Dave McMenamin, even in 2023, 2024, the reason that the trade did not happen was that the Jazz had an incredibly high asking price. And having learned what the Jazz were asking for, because they apparently got it, 2 unprotected firsts plus 2 pick swaps that can be just like firsts depending on the records, it's pretty clear Utah was asking for that type of package for Kessler, and they ended up getting it. So that's we know that the Lakers wanted Walker Kessler for a long time. Now, there's no way to know for sure unless you're inside the Jazz organization or connected to Walker Kessler whether he wanted that as well. We'll probably never know. But it is interesting. It's something to know, and we know that the Lakers at the very least wanted him for years. And we know how Danny Ainge is with trades. He's not going to make a trade unless he gets what he wants. Now, those things happened, but Utah still kept Walker Kessler. We had heard some rumblings that Kessler was frustrated with the tanking, most likely because he wanted to, get a big contract, which he ended up getting. So maybe that had something to do with all of this too. But we did get lots of rumors and rumblings that there might have been some frustration behind the scenes. We know that Walker Kessler with Team USA did not get to play very much. I think that had a bad effect on him. He goes to Utah, wants to prove he can do certain things like shoot the three, whereas Utah was telling him that they want him to play a specific style, which is and do the things he's good at. Basically the Rudy Gobert You roll to the rim, you finish, you offensive rebound, get putbacks, and then on defense you are a rim protector, drop big in the pick and roll. And we did hear rumors about some contention there, some friction between what Walker Kessler was expecting himself to be and what the Jazz expected him to be. If you go watch my old interview with Andy Larson, we talked about that. You can go listen to that. It's got some interesting tidbits if you want. But we also got some of that frustration just out in the open from Walker Kessler. If you'll remember, last season, Media Day, basically a year ago now, Walker Kessler came out and talked about how frustrated he was not getting an extension. He wanted an extension early, but he wanted a big one. And the Jazz and Kessler could not see eye to eye on that. And that, in my opinion, was the beginning of the end, because what happened after that is Utah did not get anything. Kessler was mad enough to talk about it during Media Day, which is just not something that really happens at all, honestly, unless there's pretty big issues. And the Jazz did a good job of kind of containing that frustration with Kessler, but I think that was so much more than we probably know. We know that Walker Kessler was not willing to take $1 less from the Jazz in their most recent negotiations, and he was willing to leave based off of that. There was just never a trade that was willing to happen. And we heard trade rumors the last 2 years all the time. And one of the most interesting ones came last year, and this was from Johan, how do you say his name? From Jovan Buha, one of the beat writers of the Lakers, very connected with the Lakers organization. He talked about last year during trade deadline, or actually right after trade deadline was done last season. He said that the Jazz had shopped him a little bit more around the deadline than what they had done before. I had heard the Clippers had a shot to get him in the Zubac trade instead of Mathurin. So those are just rumors. I'm not saying that's a fact. And Pincus, or that was Eric Pincus talking to Johan Buha. That's really interesting to me. So Utah was in trade discussions and almost made a trade last offseason. I think the Jazz knew that a trade was coming. They did not see eye to eye with the contract with Walker Kessler, and that's why they were shopping Walker Kessler. And when he says shopped him a little bit more than before, they had shopped him 2 seasons ago, right? So it's not just last offseason, it's beyond. And then trade deadline last season, Utah was shopping him around, nearly made a trade for Zubac. Zubac could have come to Utah or some kind of trade situation. We know that Indiana was interested in Walker Kessler, and they probably regret not going for Kessler. But Utah was in trade talks with Indiana, who ended up pivoting after not giving up what the Jazz wanted and went and got Zubac, right? So we don't know exactly what was going on there a little bit. Zubac, instead of Utah, goes to Indiana. Instead of Kessler going to Indiana, goes to the Lakers. Right? The rest is history. Now, knowing how much he was shopped around, knowing that the Jazz were willing to trade him to the Lakers, the big trade this offseason, this last trade deadline for the Jazz, was obviously Jaren Jackson Jr. And one of the things that people said back then that I didn't necessarily pay too much attention to, but I probably should have, was that the Utah Jazz made the Jaren Jackson Jr. trade as a message to Walker Kessler that we don't necessarily have to sign you for big money, right? The nice thing about Jaren Jackson Jr. is Utah knew that if Walker Kessler stayed, if he eventually accepted the Jazz offer, which was extremely fair, something like $27 million per year, he could have played next to Jaren Jackson Jr. But it wasn't enough money. And Utah had a very clear top of what they were going to pay for Kessler. They were not going to go above it. So the Jazz make the Jaren Jackson Jr. trade because he could fit with Kessler if they re-signed him, or he could play center if they traded him. A message to Kessler that if you don't want to sign a contract, we have a backup plan. We are not desperate to make this contract signing, and we are willing to trade you because now we have our potential center if you leave, right? So then we get into this upcoming offseason. I think we all expected Walker Kessler and the Jazz to figure it out. That's what we were told. That a lot of people in the know expected the Jazz to get that deal done. It didn't happen. Tim McMahon multiple times told us in multiple podcasts, and we talked about it here, wrote about it on SLC Dunk. You should be watching every video and reading every article. He talked about how bad it was behind the scenes and how much contention there was. Now we get to the theory. I don't think the Jazz planned on signing him ever. I don't think they did. I think they knew this was coming. They were planning on him leaving. Jaren Jackson Jr is the center of the future. He will start at center for the Utah Jazz. That is the theory. The Jazz planned on it. He fits the style that Will Hardy wants to play. And the Jazz knew they were going to trade Walker Kessler. And my guess is because they were trying to trade him last offseason, the Jazz knew. They knew that Luka Doncic wanted Walker Kessler. He was telling the Lakers to trade for Walker Kessler. The Jazz knew they had the leverage. I will never forget Danny Ainge talking to Luka Doncic on the court. And Jazz fans were saying things like, let's trade for Luka, let's trade for Luka, let's trade for Luka. Well, turns out Danny Ainge might have been talking about something else. And most likely it was trading Walker Kessler to the Lakers. And my guess is I would not be surprised if Danny Ainge was telling him to tell the Lakers to make sure they pay us what we're asking and you can have him. That's my guess. And I think that Jaren Jackson Jr was traded for last trade deadline as the future center of the Jazz. They knew that Walker Kessler was going to get traded. They had tried to trade him before, and they were successful this offseason, and probably for more money than more picks than they ever dreamed of. It's why the trade to the Indiana Pacers didn't happen, because the picks the Jazz were asking for were not being given. Well, they did this time, right? It did this time, and now Utah is not stuck with a $32 or $33 or $35 million contract or whatever. I think it's $32 a year to Walker Kessler that would have made it difficult to re-sign Keontae George. They now have Jaren Jackson Jr. who can start at center, who, by the way, played more center with the Grizzlies than we realize. Video on that coming soon. And they have Lauri Markkanen now in his natural position, so he plays better now that he's going to be in the 4 spot. It gives Ace Bailey his slot at the small forward, Darren Peterson at the 2, Keontae George at the 1. Everything is going to plan. Everything is going to plan. That's the conspiracy theory, but I believe it 100%. Guys, like the video, subscribe to the channel. I will talk to you tomorrow.